Hey there, this is Andy Grider, and I am the host and producer of Unique This Week. It's a production of Uniqueness is Power. We love bringing guests that are doing something different, doing something cool, and having a lot of fun while they're doing it. And to that end, we have a great guest this week. It's funny because, for the record, despite what he's called himself in the past, I've never found Sean Hand to be in any way awkward. Even still, he brought to birth his current company, Selling by Hand and Networking by Hand, out of the origin story of the awkward networker, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Sean now works with individuals, companies, and organizations that are looking to harness the power of relationship selling to outperform even their most ambitious growth goals. So, in that manner, Selling by Hand isn't just a brand, it's an action. And in the hybrid virtual world that we all now live in, where these interactions with prospects, clients, and stakeholders need to be intentional, Sean ensures that you're going to convert strangers into friends and friends into clients. After all, it's friends first and business will come, right, Sean?
That's it. That's what it's all about, man.
Right on, man. It's so nice
100%.
to have you here. Thank you for taking the time. We're
I need that snippet. That was like the best intro. I could have my 30-second elevator pitch has never been that good. So that was awesome. Thank you
Hey,
for that.
I'm more than happy to send that over to you. I have a copy of the show, so you can clip and use as you care to. You make it easy though, Sean, because it's one of the reasons it's always a pleasure to get a chance to talk with you is because I love the journey you've been on. There's a ton going on now that you left corporate America to do your own thing. But I want to
Yeah.
start by walking this back just a little bit and talking for just a minute about how you got started going down this path.
It's wild. You never really know where inspiration's coming from. And then after the inspiration strikes, Andy, you never know where it's going. You just know inspiration struck and let me go see what this is about. And walking into the uncharted territory is just part of the equation. And so I would say really started about 8 or so years ago. I was late 20s. I kind of looked up after a while working at KPMG. I was in business development. I just started really working in business development. I had been in tax before that. But I kind of like picked my head up. I looked around. I was in my late 20s. For your listeners who have been hearing my voice so far, know that I'm from the Philadelphia area. It's hard to it's hard to get rid of the accent, but it is what it is. So I've been born and raised in Philly, late 20s. I picked my head up, great career going at KPMG, and I realized, man, I would put my network late 20s. So I would probably put my network up against any of the partners here, and many of them I'm really good friends with, and they would attest. Yeah, I mean, I was out there. I had a lot of people in my network that were executives. I was on a lot of different boards, heavily involved. And so what I started to do is really start to mentor younger professionals. And that's where all of this started. I started taking on some younger professionals and giving them some of my tips, tricks, techniques, things that I've developed over time to become a better networker, relationship developer, and add some influential people to my network that propelled me so far throughout my career. And it was the best, man. So probably like 6 months or so into me really taking concerted effort into mentoring younger professionals, all of them started coming back with feedback on the tips that I gave them. And they're like, that was awesome. I've been going about this the wrong way the whole time. That one little thing you told me to do, yeah, that was great. That was really good. You got to write a book. That's how they ended. You got to write a book. And so I remember, man, it was probably 7 years ago. I sat in my bed, opened up my laptop. I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to write a book. And I just like opened up Word and I'm like, all right, here we go. That little blinking cursor is going. And I'm like, let her rip. You got a book up there. I know it. Everybody knows it. Let's go. Let's write the book. And as anyone who's ever tried to write a book will tell you, that's not how you write a book. And so the cursor kept blinking. I'm like, I don't know how I would ever do this. Close my laptop, put it away. A few months later, my wife, I kept toiling with this idea of writing a book. And my wife said, why don't you start small? Why don't you just write articles and create a blog and just put things out there bit by bit, tip by tip? And so that's what I did. And I started Awkward Networker, which was really just a blog and repository of all of my tips and techniques and funny anecdotes and my lifestyle being out, going to a lot of networking events and meeting a lot of people. I waited for the online trolls to shoot me down, right? Because that's all you think about. You're putting something out there And I just waited. I was like, they'll tell me that I'm a loser. Like they'll let me know that this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And to date, knock on wood, the trolls never came. It was well received. That people were so nice about
Well,
it. And
and
long
and
story short,
and
yeah,
it should have been, because it's an excellent book for anybody that hasn't experienced it. It's remarkable. But Sean, I want to ask the question that I think probably a lot of our listeners are wondering is, what was the secret sauce to building up such an amazing network that rivaled the partners at KPMG at such a young age? What did you do that translated into these tips and mentoring that you are well known for at this point? What was it
yeah.
that caused that to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think that's really the catalyst for selling by hand. My new business is I was always active about it. Nothing, I would get into casual conversations all the time, like everyone else. I didn't have a strategy behind every interaction, but by and large, I was spending time away from my family, time away from work, out in the community. So I'm doing one of two things. I'm trying to do something positive for the community, and in addition to that, or sometimes in replace of that, I'm building my network because I know I had learned at a very early age. The reason I got my job at KPMG was from networking. I was at a networking event in college. I never took an accounting or finance course, met somebody who got me a job and at a big four professional services firm, big four accounting firm, and worked there for 15 years. So I knew the what you know is important, but the who you know is so much more important. And so I just became obsessed with this idea that there's someone out there who's going to say something or write their name at the top of my resume and open a bunch of doors and give me all these possibilities. And I was obsessed with building that network. And over time, I mean, it didn't take long. It's one event here, one event there, and then you start to build up sort of the same way you would go to the gym. Like right now, I have to go to the gym soon because I've been sedentary in this new entrepreneurial life, and I know when I get to the gym, I'm not going to put 200 on the barbell. Like it's just it's not going to happen. So you have to ease your way into it, and then eventually it becomes a lifestyle. But for me, going out and being just genuine and unique, knowing that if I spend an hour and a half or 2 hours at an event and I meet one person and have a really good conversation, that's cool. Like I'm fine with that. And the last thing I'll say about it is I was always focused on like my network as an ecosystem. And I think there's this notion that if I'm not in the room with potential buyers, I'm wasting my time. That's like the sales that like your buyers have to be in the room. And I'm like, no, I could find myself in a room many times over with non-buyers, but the relationships I build, like you and I, Andy, like we can help each other be successful. I
Right.
might know somebody that could buy some of your services down the road or help you and you help me. And so I'm a big believer in that network is just an ecosystem. And every time I'm out, I'm just looking to add different parts of that and then figure out how I can help them.
Well, I was going to say you add value to every relationship you get into, Sean, and I think that's also a really big key. So what have you found to be the most interesting part of starting this as a full-on business? What's the big twist that's been there for you?
Us being friends, you probably know the big twist, and that is us. I would say I'm on more of the creative side. I enjoy being with people. I enjoy teaching, coaching, consulting. I enjoy creating content. I enjoy writing, all of those creative things. People that fall into that bucket, we tend what we gain there, we tend to lack in the administrative, organizational side of things. So now that I'm an entrepreneur, not having a proposal writer, not having a designer to just pretty up some of my documents, not having all of the back office things that I need, a scheduler, like all of the things that I just know are not my natural strong suit. That's the big twist is, and I knew that going in, but it really hit me in the last month or so when I have a client emailing me saying, hey, I don't think we got that last invoice from your workshop 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, I didn't send an invoice. Like, why am I doing this? I'm supposed to be making money, and I'm too busy creating and enjoying my highest and best use. I'm forgetting the very basic nuts and bolts of running a business, and that's the God's honest truth is that's the thing that I'm working on right now is delegating and improving.
See, and I love the honesty and the authenticity because I think it's a struggle, like you said, for folks who are visionary, who are entrepreneurial, who are creative. there's always skill set pieces that are dropping out. It's why I have Buzz McComber working with me, because he completes me, to use
Right.
a bad movie line. But he does. So let's talk about. I was going to take this in one direction. I'm going to actually change up a little bit to
So
some things you said. So one of the things that I see you out there doing that's amazing is you're helping ensure a company, their employees, or individual people or groups or whoever it is, gain the most out of their relationships and create the most power possible from those while adding value. So what is it that you teach them? Is it the same thing you learned about being in a room and finding that one really good conversation, or two or three? Or is there something more that you would say is the key that you're teaching them, like as a baseline piece? I'm sure, I know there's a lot more that we'll not have time to get into today, but
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of it, and it definitely varies. But I'll say the one thing that I like to focus on is the full continuum of relationship development. Is going out there and converting strangers into friends. Strangers into friends is the networking piece. That is going out there and building your personal brand, making sure that when you leave a room and your name still comes up in a room that you're not in, that you somehow can still control that narrative, right? People are talking about you in a way that you want them to be talking about you. Like all of those nuances, that's really important to get started and just continue to develop. And then I'd go a little bit further, and this is sort of as you kind of go up the chain. Now we're talking about, later stage management, maybe getting into more of the early business development type roles. Now I'm focused on not just converting strangers into friends, but that whole friends into clients continuum. And that's where we get into sort of sales in 2024, so to speak, where we need to really start filling the pipeline, to use a sales phrase, but then progressing those opportunities through the pipeline. And for me, it's always about relationships. My tagline is revenue follows relationships. I don't care what you're selling. I don't care what you're trying to grow. If people don't trust you, then they're not going to buy what you're selling. And so for me, it's all about that. And I think sometimes we're so busy, we have so many demands, and there's so many emails. There's just so many emails. And you realized you had a 70% of the way there opportunity that just needed a little love. Like it just needed a couple more hours of, like I always do my three essential outreaches every morning. Like it just needed a little bit of that, like just a little more love. And it would have taken from 70% to 100% help you meet your goal. And then last thing I'll say about it is on that continuum is not just the friend to client, but then as we move up the chain, now we're talking about people running businesses, people running, business development organizations. There, I want to focus on developing from client to portfolio. Now we're talking about cross-selling opportunities. Now we're talking about taking clients from A to Z and sharing with them the full suite of services, creating referrals and revenue channels. Andy, the amount of companies that I'm working with now, where when I ask the question, what's your channel partnership structure like? How are you developing, two-way streets with your referral partners? And the response is, so wait, what? and it's just, it makes me so happy. I don't mean that in like a condescending way. It makes me happy because it's like, that's where I can add value. That's where I live, creating referral partnerships and creating those channel partnerships. That's a whole nother side of relationship development that many people never get around to really considering. And so all of that excites me.
right. Oh, I mean, those are all really poignant pieces. I'm going to ask one more question, then I want to get into talking about the current selling by hand and networking by hand side of things. But what types of things would you recommend someone do to add value to a relationship as they're building out? They've maybe moved from strangers to friends, but now we're looking to go from friends to clients. What kind of things can someone do to add value?
What right off the bat, I think there's two things. So, well, there's a couple things. One of the things I could do is there's a couple different ways of having conversations with existing friends and letting them know what you do and how they can help you. That conversation is so much easier to have, and this is where like that imposter syndrome kicks in, where people they don't want to presume on the friendship. Like you and I are friends, so if I ask you for a referral or if I ask if your company would have any interest in working with my company, people are afraid that then you, Andy, would think that's all this ever was. This was never a true friendship. This is always me on a long sales cycle trying to get work from you. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up mentally. And so the best way to overcome that is to provide value up front. So before I even ask you for a favor, Andy, I might be trying to find any unique way possible to add value to you before I make the ask for how you can add value to me. And people will get hung up there because they're like, well, what I do for a living, my company can't help Andy. Like I don't have any way of helping him. It just, we're in two totally different industries. And I implore people to think a little bit more outside the box, because Andy, I'm using you as an example because I'm looking at you, you're so much greater than what you do, and everybody is. So there's times where now I'm 36, but like in my late 20s, I'd be trying to sell and influence people in their mid 60s. I had a guy stop me one time and say, buddy, sir, he goes, son, do you know that I've been in this industry longer than you've been on this earth? And I'm like, I was like, yeah, okay, you look great. What's the name of your moisturizer? You look amazing. But what do I do with that? There's a huge age gap. And so for all those reasons, that person in particular, we ended up becoming good friends. My first outreach was his daughter was graduating from a local university, and she didn't know what she wanted to do. She was a finance major. So I said, introduce me to her. I'm heavily involved in a lot of different young professional organizations. I have a lot of friends in the different companies. Maybe she could possibly get an internship, but introduce me. I would love to just mentor her a little bit and see if I can help her. So there you go. Right. So it had nothing to do with what he did for a living or what I do for a living, but immediately I wanted to make sure I added value before I made the ask. And the last thing I'll say about that is sometimes we can also ask for favors that have nothing to do with work. So a perfect, for instance, like when I was writing my book and I had to look for 20 peer editors to peer edit my book. 6 of them were my clients, or I just asked them, hey, do me a favor. I'm looking for these different unique personas. Do you mind if you fit one of these personas? Do you mind peer reviewing my book? So it was me asking them for a favor, but it had nothing to do with KPMG. It had nothing to do with work. It was a personal favor to peer edit my book. And all 6 of them that I asked to review my book, we ended up having a much stronger relationship after that, because it was an intimate ask, the type of ask that you would only, ask a friend to do. So I think sometimes just being open and honest, like if we truly are friends, let me make the ask for something non-work related to strengthen that relationship.
Absolutely. It's wow. I mean, this is pitching from a playbook that I know you have created, and I know you're very good at putting out there, but it's great for our listeners to hear it, because there's a lot of these things, like you said, people get hung up on. They worry about, am I reaching too far? Am I doing too much? Am I asking too much? All of those. Those are all tremendously helpful. I want to switch gears a little here to make sure we get to the other part of the interview. So you've built both selling by hand and networking by hand out now. Let's talk for just a minute about what both of them do intrinsically, but then also I want to get to who are you finding your services are resonating the most with, and why do you think it's going in that direction? Because there's some new twists from what you and I have talked about in the past that I think are even interesting to you, perhaps. So
it's the entrepreneurial journey, man. Like it's nothing but twists. That's the fun part about it, is you come out thinking it's going to be one thing, and then a month later it's something else entirely. And that's the fun part about it. So yeah, networking by hand is really the evolution of Awkward Networker. It's all focused on anyone. And so I'm speaking at colleges and universities, and I'm doing workshops for women's professional development events and different employee resource groups. And so it's a bit ubiquitous. It's networking. Anyone can benefit from networking. Selling by hand is much more targeted towards professional services firms. So think audit tax advisory firms, law firms, engineering firms, banks, and financial services firms. All of those that are focused on growth and growth through selling and relationship selling. And so that's where selling by hand comes in. And I really focus on taking them through that journey from friend to now client and existing client base and growing all of that. So it's really parsed out by focus. Networking by hand being more ubiquitous, selling by hand being much more targeted in terms of growth, top line, bottom line.
Right. So when you're working with these firms, I know something else out of selling by hand has kind of come out here where, as you mentioned, you get to that next stage of the relationship, and it seems to be coming really quickly here, where suddenly you're able to leverage your network to help them further, whether that's making referrals to other folks that might be able to use their law firm, their engineering firm, their banks and financial services firm, their CPA firm, whatever it is, their tax advisory firm. How has that evolved, and kind of can you give a little bit of a maybe a
Yeah,
backstory or a fun story about that? Because I loved what you told me the last time we talked about this.
yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, you were one of the first people I talked to. I think I called you. I was like, so what is this? Because I've been getting these asks and I don't know what to do with them. And it came out of left field. I thought for sure, public speaking, workshops, trainings, and one-on-one coaching. That's bookmarked. Those are my services. And then out of nowhere come two additional services, one being strategy and consulting, because there are some business development organizations that have called me saying, before you even get to training, we don't have anyone to train. You need
Yeah.
to teach us how to grow and what a business development organization looks like. And so that's more of a strategy component that I didn't really see coming, but is really exciting. And then the last one is what you mentioned, is more the referral by hand type service, which is just that. It's business development outsourcing. I had built such a robust network, and now when people call me, I'll caveat this: being an entrepreneur, the best part about it is I can just work with whoever I want to work with, and I have to remind myself that it's so fun that I can tell friends, yeah, I'll work with you. That'll be fun. Let's draft up a contract. And people that I don't know so well or I don't really want to work with, I'll be like, it's a great idea, but I think I'm okay right now.
Yep.
And I'm the boss. I can do like, yeah, it's so much fun. And the reason I say that, Andy, is because
Yeah.
yes,
Sorry.
the
Yeah.
reason I say that is because I'm going down this path of now business development outsourcing, but I'm worried about it being, you know, not sleazy, but like sleazy, open up the trench coat, like, yeah, I got CFOs, I have CEOs who you want to meet, right? Like, I don't want to be weird like that. And so I'm very cautious about that side of things. So I've made it really abundantly clear. I'm only working with friends who are in positions in which I believe in what they're doing. I want them to be successful. They're doing it the right way, but also they're small enough that they legitimately can't afford a business development person. They can't
Right.
afford the $200,000 a year plus the commissions and all that stuff to hire someone. And so for me, that's more fun because then I can just come in, join their executive team calls, and be like, "All right, so where's your top five in your prospect lists? Let me see if I know anybody there. I'll see if I can get you some meetings." And that's really exciting. And then of course the benefit for me is, you know, they are my friends and this is all great, but I still run a business. So, whatever you guys bring in based on one of my relationships, I'll get, X% of the deal
Right.
or whatever it might be.
Well, I mean, and again, that's another part that people sometimes get a little touchy about when they're in their own head. To your end, as somebody that does this as well for a living, a lot of the connecting and pieces like that, the piece of advice I would throw back is, it's not I've got watches, I've got knives. Oh, you don't like that? I've got wallets, right? You're not the guy
Yeah.
hawking shit in Times Square, but you are actually, as long as you're adding value, you don't end up wearing that hat, so to speak. You don't end up being labeled that way, because I think the biggest key for all of our listeners to understand in the connecting world, you hit it on the head all the way through with everything you're saying, is building that relationship to where it's a friendship, where you're adding value. As long as you're still adding value, if you're asking to get paid for adding the value at the end of it and taking them places they weren't going to go before, there's nothing sheepish or horrible or awkward about that.
Right.
There shouldn't be. So,
Right.
Sean, the last question I have is around this. Is there anything, if somebody said, hey, I'm looking at getting out of corporate myself, I've listened to this, I'm inspired now, what advice might you give somebody that is looking to do that? And then we'll get into how to get in touch with you.
For sure. Build, I always say, whatever the idea is, get through the ideation phase and get through into the market phase while in the parent's proverbial garage. And the parent's proverbial garage is your current employer. So don't rush because you have an idea to leave corporate America and go pursue this idea that you basically have on 3 pages of the notebook. Take the time now, make sure that you're not violating any independence issues or whatever with your employer. But take the time now to start building out. What is your plan? What is your business plan? Is this marketable? What's your growth strategy? Like, just start taking the time, take a deep breath, and give yourself a runway. In 6 months, I want to be at these points with my side hustle, my potential new business. And if I get there, then maybe I'll consider leaving. And then if you don't, push it back another 4 months, because you don't want to. It's like the difference between infatuation and love, right? Like, you don't want to be infatuated with the idea and go marry it. You want to make sure that you're in love with it, because there's going to be ups and downs. So do that while you're in the parents' garage until you outgrow it. And then, love you, mom, love you, dad. I got to go on tour and see what this is about.
Infatuated versus love in your parents' garage. I'm not going to get that out of my head for a while. But Sean, I really do appreciate that, because there's a lot of truth to everything you just said. But how does someone, whether they're a law firm, a CPA firm, a tax advisory firm, an individual, a group, anybody else that wants to learn about selling by hand or networking by hand, get in touch with you?
Easiest way is Sean@sellbyhand.com. Send me an email. Let me know what you're thinking. Find me on LinkedIn, Sean Hand. Pretty easy to find on there. The website, sellbyhand.com, is live. I'm not 100% proud of it, but hey, that's entrepreneur life. It's at 80%. So I said, whatever. Hit submit, and I'll figure the rest out later.
I was going to say, stitch the parachute on the way down, brother.
That's it. Just being honest.
Indeed. I love it. So again, Sean, thank you for being here today. Absolute pleasure. My name is Andy Grider. I'm a host and producer for Unique This Week. We've got a whole channel up at uniquenessispower.com. It's a YouTube channel. We've got dozens and dozens of interviews with entrepreneurial folks who have built something out that, as Sean mentioned, sort of morphed and became something new and adventurous and cool. And if you're an entrepreneur, you understand that. And if you understand that, you also understand why what Sean's doing and how he's building it is all part of that ride into the Class 4 Rapids. Maybe you thought you were going in with a full shot right down the pipe, and suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, I'm over here and stuck on the side a little bit. Now I'm going to have to go, roll this thing to get back to where I belong. It's always a ride. It's always an adventure. It's always a lot of fun. And Sean handles it with a great aplomb. If you are a CPA firm, a law firm, an engineering firm, anyone who's looking to build value in the growth process, or wants somebody who can help you learn how to strategize about your business development, I can't think of anybody better at it than Sean Hand. Sean, again, thank you for being here. Really appreciate the time, and encourage our listeners to pass this on to anybody they know this could help.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.